Hello, this is Tatiana with Truth Ball in Search of Goof. Before I get started, I have to let you know I'm not a doctor, and these videos are part of my coping strategy and to help validate those who have been in abusive relationships. This particular playlist, Getting Off the Codependent Carousel, is after you have identified that you are or have been in an abusive relationship. The codependent, the victim in that scenario, has our own struggles to go through to get back to being healthy. And so I'm trying to think of what I'm going to call this one. The only thing coming to my mind is the codependent Conga line. I keep thinking about the dance party, you know, and you dance in the conga line. Okay, so it'll have a conga line or something like that in there. Okay. And a reminder, if you haven't watched my other videos, I did just get Invisalign, and so that is why you're seeing me. I'm not trying to look like Marilyn Monroe, but I am doing a lot of weird stuff with my lips, so if it's distracting, look away from the screen. Okay. Anyways, okay, so this is one that I am struggling with. And like I said, you know, my videos are, you know, part of my own coping strategy as well. So one thing that I have been dealing with in regards to my breaking free from the codependent carousel is how to cope with other codependents. So, and I can even say that even as you watch my videos, I have been in 3 major abusive relationships. And I have been in healthy relationships, and I have been in relationships with other codependents. And I can say that being in the relationships with the codependents, the scenarios that are happening to them trigger me, which causes me to treat that partner as if they're an abuser. So, as well as I've also been noticing lately that as I have been getting healthier and can see, you know, what my parents and caretakers have done to me. I can see how that has played out in my siblings' lives. And of course, in my heart, you know, I think, golly, just watch my videos and break free from that crap. I can't believe you're still putting up with that. And, you know, the truth is that you can't tell someone who is in love with a lie the truth. And they're not consciously in love with this lie, but they do have a concept of what reality is based on how they were raised. As well as, you know, it was very painful for me to break out of that reality. And I think we'll also find that when you try to confront a codependent, you know, that can cause a lot of anger. Nobody wants to be told that your reality isn't right. Nobody wants to hear that. And so, not having done more research at the time, you know, I just go to my basics. Well, what did it take me to get out of that thinking process? Even though, you know, my mother, who was codependent, gave me books on codependency, would sometimes discuss codependency. It was years before I cracked open one of those books. As well as my mother, to me, wasn't a very credible source because she never fully broke out of codependency. She never did. So it was kind of like, you know, a feeling like the blind leading the blind. And certainly you are welcome to feel the same way about me. I don't want to come across like I'm some super duper authority. It's why I try to remember to put that disclaimer in the beginning. I'm figuring things out too. And I do share when I make major mistakes. I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional, and I'm not perfect, and I am working on healing. Anyway, coming back to my point about that is that, you know, communicating with a codependent can trigger us. And it was also making me think about well, yeah, wanting to help my siblings, watching, our caretakers and stuff manipulate them and watching them react and suffer the misery to it and not being able to, come in there and stop it by just speaking the truth. I know that's not going to be effective. And then also that sorry, I lost my train of thought. That I completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, I'm sure I'll come back to it because it swirls in my head all the time. Okay, so instead, let me go over to my notes here because I was reviewing one of my videos the other day and had seen that I had mentioned the movie The Fury, and I had notes on it too. And I said I would do an analogy, so I'm not going to do a whole video about it, but I want to warn you, there are spoilers here. If you have not seen the military movie The Fury, it's got Shia LaBeouf and Brad Pitt, stuff like that. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, I'm going to spoil it for you. If you have seen it, you'll get what I'm trying to say here. In regards to codependency and surviving an abusive relationship and then you not participating in that codependent conga line. And that's what I'm saying. The codependent conga line would be, my stepmom did this to me and now I'm watching her do it to my brother, and then so I want to come in and my brother and say something to my brother, and then my brother does a passive aggressive action to me, and then that makes me upset and makes me react, and so I behave codependently. Again, it's just this conga line, and we're all dancing, instead of stopping, and I sorry, I know I'm going in several directions right here, but I believe that we I've seen this a lot of times in support groups where people are freaked out. Am I the narc? And I've mentioned this before in other videos. You are not the narc. A narc is incapable of asking themselves if they are the narc. In fact, I can tell you that the covert, overt narcissist, when I first started studying about this stuff, I had gotten a book about divorcing a narcissist. As I was reading it, I shared with him a couple things, and I do remember, at the time I didn't pay attention, but I remember back then when he was reading the book, he said to me, I don't know if I'm the narc or if I'm the codependent. And I'm like, you're the codependent, blah, 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 because this is what the narc does, and she does this, and she does that, and she does this. And remember that the narcissist is always doing a smear campaign on the victim. So it wasn't until months later that I started to realize she's the victim. And he's been doing the smear campaign on his soon-to-be ex-wife. He is the narc. So then, when I come back and I think, hey, for a moment, he wondered if he was the narc or the codependent. And he never mentioned it again. He never mentioned it again, even though I watched narc videos. He totally gaslighted me when I watched those narc videos. He never educated himself further about narcissism. A narcissist is unable to look at and say, I'm a narcissist. It's part of being a narcissist. Anyway, but the codependent, I believe that the reason that we are afraid that we're the narc is because we do learn in those abusive relationships how to communicate, and they are unhealthy ways to communicate. For example, these are the ones that really get me. We learn to be passive aggressive because we can't directly say, hey, you're an asshole. We do passive aggressive things and say passive aggressive things, and I've done a video about that, getting off the codependent carousel, to not be passive aggressive. We can be abandoning. I still struggle with that. I have a hard time when I am triggered to continue to treat somebody with respect by communicating. I shut down and run and hide to recover and focus. But that period of time where I'm reacting that way, I am abandoning that person. I am. and abandonment is very painful and is a strategy that narcissists use. So I can see, you know, how when my siblings or other people that I know who are codependent, when they do those things, it triggers me. Well, they're being pass-ag. This narc pissed them off. Now they're in a bad mood and they are being pass-ag to me. So I'm going to react like they're a narc and I'm going to get angry. Okay? We don't want to do that. We want off the codependent carousel. We want healthy communication. So, coming back to what I was saying about the fury. This movie was important to me for many different ways, in many different ways, and for different scenarios in my life. But this movie stood out to me because I felt as I watched it that the theme was that you had the guys that are in the tank, these 4 guys who are in the tank who've already fought wherever they had been, Ethiopia, and now they're over in Europe, and they are fighting an enemy. These men have been in this tank, and they kind of portray to you what happens to your mind if you're looking at the movie this way. What happens to your mind and your psyche and your personality when you are in that tank and focused on the enemy all the time. And you remember, in this tank, you know, you've got this is how you look at the world. And when we're in an abusive relationships, this is all I can see. Abuse, 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 survive abuse. And as I've mentioned in my gray rock videos, you know, one is a little bit more serious, the other one I'm at the point of emotionally laughing, and I conclude at the end of it to remember this is a survival strategy. These are not the types of videos you want popping up on your Facebook. People are not going to understand what it takes to survive an abusive relationship unless they have been in it. They're not going to get it. To me, if I was an outsider and had never, ever been in an abusive relationship, my Great Rock video looks like a tutorial on how to lie. It flat out looks like a tutorial on how to lie. It is a survival strategy. So I want to clarify, when I say survival strategy, it means you are at war and these rules do not count during peacetime. You don't need to pretend you're ashamed when your boss is being a super fucking dick to you for no reason and you know damn well he's just upset because he didn't get his coffee. You can have a boundary and healthily communicate, or use humor. Well, I see somebody came out on the wrong side of the bed this morning. I bet you need a double coffee. I'll be right back. Okay? You don't need to use that survival strategy everywhere in life. It is in an abusive relationship that you have to use that strategy to survive. And when you get out, the trick is how to turn that off. And this is what bothered me about the end of this movie. So, you know, as they're showing you how these 4 men have changed or are focused on wartime, you know, and you've got Shia LaBeouf's character who really quotes the Bible, and he's really good at crying as an actor. And he's, you know, I forget what they call him, but, you know, he's the one who quotes scripture and stuff. And you can see him having to believe that he is fighting for God in order to do what he's doing, and know that what he's doing is right for the right reasons, that he has to do his survival strategies, because he's not just fighting for himself, he is fighting for the freedom of the world. This was a world war. For the world, they were fighting for freedom. But things have to happen in your mind in order to do things that you would normally not do. We do not normally wake up and make a plan to kill people. It takes a survival strategy in your mind to carry out things that are not normal, yet we do need in times of war. in the movie they also show that there's a dinner scene where you can see Brad Pitt, what was his character, Big Daddy, where you see him wanting to and trying to relive the peace that you and I take for granted, to sit down and have a meal and talk with friends and to mentally remove himself from the tank. He tries to return to society, or for at the very least to pretend that they are in a peaceful scenario. And you will see what happens in that scene. It is not peaceful because one of them just can't do it. He's been at war so long, he can't get his mind back, even for a temporary moment, to function as if everything is peaceful. And after that, they have another bombing. It's a very, very good movie, metaphorically. And they have introduced a character who doesn't want to fight. And that is also very interesting. If you watch some of my videos where I'm saying to fight, and when you can see the emotion on my face, that you have to fight. There is a horrible scene in the movie where they are insisting you have to fight because you are in this war. And if you don't fight, the rest of us are in danger. And I often feel that way. You know, for example, you know, when we're talking about the holidays, right? If I have to go to a holiday with all these dysfunctional people, if nobody else is fighting with me, I'm in danger. If everybody at the table were fighting with me, I'm safe. We imagine going to Christmas with your dysfunctional family, and if every single person in that room knew everything that you know, the one narc would be powerless. As you all look around the room and smirk and laugh and roll your eyes, and you would feel safe, and the holidays would become better. Okay? This movie depicts exactly what I'm talking about in a very powerful, emotional way. The one kid who never expected to be at war is now holding a gun and being forced to use it by his own comrades because they need to know that they are safe, because they are at war and can't seem to convince him that he's at war. And this is the same thing that happens when we are trying to convince another codependent that they are at war. They don't want to do it. You can hand them the gun. You can hand them that book about codependency. Go ahead and try it. They don't want to read it. They don't want to read it until they get to the point that they are fighting for their life. And you will see that happen in the movie. Not until they have to fight for their life will they fire that shot. Okay? Hand them the gun and leave it alone for your own health. But nevertheless, in the end of this movie, here's the spoiler, okay? Because they have the final battle, okay? Which our side does win. But before winning, everybody in that tank dies, except the one who didn't want to fight. And when I watched that movie the first time, I bawled my eyes out in anger. I was furious. When I watched that end, I just started praying, God, why does he get to live? Those 4 guys have fought for over 2 years so that this kid could survive. And they died. Big Daddy dies saving him. And there is a point that those 4 men have to contemplate, or I think it was really Big Daddy who was contemplating, could I go back to being at peace after seeing what I've seen? And Since seeing that movie, that's all I can think about that. Can I, having been a warrior, encouraging you to be a warrior, can I go back to peace? Maybe there is no going back. You know, a lot of times I think about that movie, The Matrix, right? Your red and blue pill. If you could go back to not knowing that there were narcissists in the world, would you? The narcissists are still there, but would you go back to not knowing? There are times, like in The Matrix, I think, yeah, I just want a juicy steak. I just want a juicy steak, and I don't want to know. Because it was beyond painful understanding that there are narcissists and that these games are happening all around me all the time. And it's overwhelming sometimes. It is. Once you know the truth, it can be overwhelming, especially when you're someone like me who wants to help and to see the uselessness of trying to help. You know? Anyway, what bothered me the most is, and it had that typical scene at the end, you know, where the kid gets rescued and he's sitting in the back of an ambulance and he's got a blanket around him. I think I've talked about this before somewhere else, but you know, it's a typical movie scene. The blanket while they're sitting in the ambulance, right? And that boy, I'm thinking, he's done. He's done with the war. He's going home. And those 4 men who fought for him and fought for us and fought for the world, why don't they get to go home? Did they just finally become too evil to cope? Is that possible? Is that possible that you have had to fight against abuse and narcissism so hard that you can never be at peace again? I disagree. I disagree with that. So then I tried to think, well, what happens then when the war is over and our military men come home? How do they come back home? What's been our problem, or at least what I've been hearing on the news lately? We have a lot of veterans who come home and kill themselves. There's a big problem with suicide. And they've talked, what is the solution? For them to go through a transfer, I'm not thinking of the word, but suggesting that before leaving the war, they go through this transition period to help them adjust back to the world. Certainly, our, you know, World War II veterans who come home as heroes, I think that you and I, as survivors of abuse, if we were treated as heroes, adjusting back to a happy life would be a hell of a lot easier. Coming back from Vietnam and treated like baby killers, or how our siblings treat us, why aren't you functioning in our dysfunction? Not only does my narc mother or father hate you, but I hate you too because they're constantly bothering me that you aren't participating in their drama. Patoo. Spit on you. Every fucking holiday. Okay? That doesn't help us come back to a place of peace. So anyway, these are things that I do contemplate quite a bit because I have had to be a warrior, and I do encourage you, depending on the phase that you are in, if you are at war, I encourage you to be a warrior. Sharpen your weapons, become a marksman, and when it is time for peace, get off that codependent carousel. Do not participate in the codependent conga line with those who you know and love who are still participating. So the only thing I can offer for today, because as my coping strategy, I needed to look up some solutions is what I can suggest that I came across, something called nonviolent communication. Because, as I was talking earlier about abandonment, being passive aggressive, these are, quote unquote, violent means of communication. You are communicating something, but you're doing it in a hurtful manner. Okay, so what would be nonviolent communication? What really is, at least the question that I asked as I was doing some research, what is healthy communication? Not manipulating. I do have a problem. I do struggle with not being manipulative. The other day, I can't give too many details about it, but I can tell you that I did manipulate a situation. And I was thrilled about it. I was pretty sure it was going to work out how I wanted it to, because I had been involved in something and didn't want any credit for it, because I felt like a bunch of other people had done way more than myself. So I manipulated the situation so that this person, that person, and this person are going to get credit, while because I set it up, I was able to set it up where I'm not going to get any credit. Okay, so inside, I'm like stoked. I'm stoked. This is pretty sure going to play out exactly how I want it. But I thought about it the next day, and I was like, I know that I was actually dishonest to someone in order for me to do it that way. And could I have done it without actually being dishonest? And I could have. Once I thought about it, I was focused on my goal. Because nobody's going to come to me. Nobody's going to know. So nobody's going to come and tell me, hey, Tatiana, you could have done that honestly. I need to check up on myself all the time. And I'm not sure how, but I'm sure I could have found a way to do that and to get the results I wanted without actually being dishonest to this one person. I'm concerned about that. You know? How did I play that out doing something that I don't agree with? Still working on myself. So how do we switch from being manipulative, from being dishonest, from having to put that survival strategy mask on, or being passive aggressive, or, you know, unintentionally abandoning people while we're coping in our own minds? This is my goal. These are some of the things that I was able to pick up around the internet and stuff. One source was talking about living in a way that is conscious, present, let's see, and attuned to the genuine loving needs of yourself and others. If I had been conscious and present while I was putting that together, or had paused for a moment, I could have put the safeguard in there to make sure that I wasn't dishonest in the process. I was focused on the genuine loving needs of myself and others. I think. Pretty sure. Okay, but, excuse me, and what I was saying earlier, practicing nonviolent communication. I didn't find a whole bunch about this. Seemed like it was maybe a term that's used, but it talks about your observations, your feelings, and your needs and requests. And somewhere in that article it was saying to just ask for what you need. I had to do that yesterday? I think yesterday. And I really had to come to the end of my rope. I had to completely give up what I was struggling against in my mind. And I mean, I feel almost like I have to credit God with this, because I feel like, I even feel like it didn't come from me. As I was trying to think of what this action means and what will it mean to them, and how do I say it so that this comes across? How do I address this but not attack on that? And it's all convoluted in my mind, and I literally just fell down and cried. I just cannot do this anymore. And so I sent my request. I just picked up my cell phone and sent the text message with the flat out request. I have no agenda. These are the facts. These are the facts. Are you willing to do this? And the result was like, awesome. Anyway, so I thought it was interesting today that I was reading that article, and it was saying if you communicate, just request, if you just communicate healthily, you'd be surprised at how positive things go. Oh. I could say I tried it once. I tried it once the day before reading the article, and thumbs up. So, maybe I don't need to work so hard during peacetime. What do you guys think? Okay, in regards to communicating with codependents, because like I said, the abuser abusing the codependent triggers me to attack the codependent to fight back. And that doesn't work on a codependent. Okay. This article I was reading, it said, expect change to be slow. Let's see. Meaning when you confront the codependent, you can just be creating anger. Just expect the change to be slow. And for them to observe you for whatever it is that they are noticing about your healthier communication. What, for example, it said, get away from codependency yourself. You wanting, oh, this one got me good. You wanting to change a codependent is you being codependent. And I was like, oh, damn. I knew that and I forgot that. Hells yeah, wanting to change the abuser and participating in that tango, yeah, that was codependent. Oh, when I want to change that codependent, I'm being codependent. Shit. Dang. Okay. Anyway, so it said, get away from being codependent yourself. Do not try to change that person. Do not actively try to change them. And the way that they recommended was to be mysterious. Health is something that they will see in you and find interesting. And I can say that. It is very subtle, but I can tell you that my siblings are watching. I'm not getting treated the way that I used to get treated when I participated. Not as much, at least. And I think they are starting to figure out that something else is different about me. They've gotten past the hating me for not participating and are kind of like curious. I'm getting more questions. I'm getting that they're actually, for the first, I'm 43, and they're starting to ask me something about myself. Curious. So when I read that, I thought, okay, yeah, that is validating. That, yeah, I can see that's happening in my life. Treat them as though they are emotionally mature. Treat the codependent like they are going to communicate with you healthily. Now, we've talked plenty of times with the narcissist, you're not going to get anywhere. So go gray rock. You will never argue with a narc and win the argument. You will win the fight by going gray rock. But with a codependent, you can communicate healthily. Treat them as though they are healthy. Because eventually they will be. As victims, as codependents, we've learned to communicate based on what was approved and disapproved of by the abuser. A codependent is observing what is successful, what works. When someone communicates with them, they are listening and observing to new ways to be happy, new ways to communicate. I can tell you this, as a codependent, boundaries work on me. And they work very quickly. What happened the other day? Oh, I was yakking with this city official dude, and I was kind of, to me, I was just like, wah, wah, wah. That really pissed me off. And then he made a joke back saying, oh, Tatiana, not as important as you thought, huh? This is what happened, blah, 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 blah. And that was it. That was the joke he made. And I just kind of, in my mind, I was like, and then we went on to the next joke. But later on that evening, as I was replaying the conversation, hard to talk with these, replaying the conversation, and I was like, he totally called me on my shit. I was throwing a tantrum because I hadn't been treated the way I wanted to be treated. And he was right. I didn't have the authority for what I had wanted, and I was butthurt because I didn't have the authority. I was throwing a tantrum. Not to him, but for me to get to the point that I was whining about it, I had in my mind been throwing a tantrum for a while and was venting it out. He made the joke, which was calling me on my shit. So when I saw him the next day, I said, you know what? You really called me on my shit. And he had no idea. He was like, I wouldn't call you on your shit. What are you talking about? And I was like, no, when you said blah, 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 you're right. I was throwing a tantrum. I need to get over being angry about it. So he didn't even intend to have a boundary. But we as codependents, we're pleasers. We are always looking for boundaries. What's my boundary here? Am I okay to do this? Does that make you happy? Oh, that doesn't make you happy. Okay. So when we're communicating with a codependent, I believe, what this article was saying is just communicate healthily. Work on communicating healthily and try communicating just in a healthy manner. Keep your boundaries simple. They don't need to be aggro like it's against a narc. It can be very peaceful and non-violent. Oh, I'm sorry. I just don't think I feel comfortable doing that. It doesn't have to be, fuck you. I fucking know what you're doing. You're being a flying monkey for her, so fuck no. When are you going to wake up to the crap she's doing to you? None of that's going to work. But you can say, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't think I could do that. And don't argue, that codependent is going to pay attention to what your boundaries are without you having to confront them about what they're participating in. Oh, that's hard. I know it's hard. But I do have to agree. I have seen these things work out. But being consciously aware of doing that is hard, But I'm going to work on it. And part of me doing that is, like I've told you before, as an educator, you can take in information, but you are more than 50 times more likely to do it if you teach someone else the same thing. So I'm totally manipulating you. I'm totally using you. I'm using you so that I am 50% more likely to communicate in a healthy manner. Does it help if I'm honest? I hope you don't feel confronted. Okay, anything else on there? Oh, this article, it was encouraging. It said that to remind yourself, when you're hurting about it, or they are, participating as a flying monkey or whatever, that they are acting according to their programming. And that mature love does recognize this, and you need to work towards building mature and loving relationships. I know those of you who have watched my videos, I because I think about this too, as a Christian, I do think about, honoring your mother and father. And I have struggled with that all my life. And I feel sometimes like, wow, some of the things I've talked about in my videos seem really disrespectful of my mother. Or I come across like a hater. And I don't hate her. And I do love my mother. I do love her. As with anyone that we have been angry with, that we love, there are the things that they've done that have upset you, and then there is the love that, can't be destroyed. But coming back to, what they're saying about, they're acting according to their programming. As I said, my mother read a lot of books about codependency. My mother gave me books about codependency. My mother attended Codependents Anonymous meetings, and she never broke out of codependency. She was never completely free. And over the years, as I have tried to say, why? How could she abandon me? How could she not do this? How could she hurt me? How could she choose this? Etc., etc. Trying to find those answers has helped me to see who manipulated her, when it happened, and why she couldn't see the truth. And also the pride that kept her from completely being set free. But she was acting on her own programming. My mother was damaged very young. Very, very young. My mother was married when she was 12. 12! And never could mature past that, because she never had a true father figure or mother figure or mentor, anyone else who could change her programming. She did have books, etc., but for some reason those weren't enough, or it couldn't confront her on the last few things. Maybe like giving up pride. Because I can tell you this, I have a very hard time letting go of pride. I really do. And I would have to say, because I'm a Christian, I have my perception of God as my Father. When I'm confronted, I let it go. And it's hard. But because I have been programmed, I have chosen to program myself by reading the Bible, by insisting on thinking about things in a particular paradigm. I have programmed myself that my Father has told me not to make mistakes based on pride. So let go of your pride. And then I have practiced, when I let go of my pride, does my life go the way that I want it to go? So I have been rewarded when I let go of pride. So I have been, if you want to just look at it as a scientific programming method, I have programmed myself to choose my mentor that tells me how to break, that I need to break free whether I want to or not. To do it, I do it, and then I have seen and reaped the rewards of that, so that I have a different programming. I do struggle with pride, but I have worked on reprogramming my mind. So you don't have to be a Christian if that's something you are interested in. But I am encouraging you to break out of whatever that last phase is that is holding you back from true freedom. Reprogram your mind and have compassion on other codependents, that it's programming, unintentional, but they have been programmed, and you can't just throw a cog in the wheel and see change. There's a cog in the wheel. That means you stop forward motion. They need to observe the results of different programming. emanating from you, hopefully. Okay, anything else? All right, if you cannot let go of being manipulative, or you need a stopgap, reward good behavior and go gray rock on negative behavior. With my siblings, I reward good behavior. I reward authentic emotional communication. It usually doesn't last very long. It's not that I have these long, conversations or whatever, but I reward that by giving insight to myself, by saying encouraging things, whatever that means to you, to reward good behavior. When that codependent is behaving like the narc has taught them to, go gray rock on it. You don't have to go gray rock the same hardcore emotional way that you do on a narc, but gray rock is gray rock. Don't acknowledge it. Don't discuss it. Just go gray rock. You're oblivious to it. That could be why my siblings think I'm so stupid, because I don't acknowledge when they're being a flying monkey. I don't acknowledge when they are trying to create a smear campaign on someone else in the family. I don't participate in any of the games. And so I can see them concluding that I'm stupid, that I have no idea. I have no idea that normal people participate in gossip. Or they just pass-agged me. My feelings should be hurt and I should be engaging in the argument that they needed to engage in. They might just think I'm stupid. But gray rock, that's my goal. You just pass-agged me. I'm going to put something on your Facebook that says I love you. I love that stuff. Confuses them. And hopefully, over time, it does break through. That I do love them. Even if they can think I'm just a stupid idiot. Their stupid idiot sister really loves them. Is that such a bad thing? I can accept that. I will accept them knowing that I love them in any way I can get it to them. That's okay. Right? Okay, that's all I have for today, and I really thank you for letting me share with you, because like I said, I really am working on this goal myself in my life, to be less manipulative. I want to go back home. The war is over. There are still people warring around me. There are still people fighting over there, but I'm home, and I've survived. And I want to readjust to the healthy prosperity that I fought for. I've done my time. I served my time. And I fought hard. And I deserve to enjoy the abundance of what I have fought for and what you are fighting for. There are healthy people out there, and I want to be a healthy person as well. And I want to be a healthy communicator with the people who are not healthy, because they will become healthy as well, I hope. Okay. All right. And I have been forgetting to do this for a while. If you are getting off the codependence carousel, or if anything that I said triggered you about your relationships with your siblings, etc., your girlfriend at work and how her stories trigger you, etc., give the National Domestic Violence Hotline a call. You can talk to them about all kinds of things that have to do with abuse, or hop into a support group online in your neighborhood, whatever works out for your personality. But give the National Domestic Violence Hotline a call and see if they have any resources for you. I do have to say, I'm personally not an advocate for Codependence Anonymous, but if that works for you, that's something. But there are many other types of support groups for codependents and survivors of abuse. If you do want to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline and ask them for resources in your area, the number is 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. Okay, thank you all for participating in my own support group here with you. All right, much love.